Well, I've never been in prison. I've never been in prison, but I understand that incarceration is to live life behind bars without freedom. Behind bars without freedom. Then there is solitary confinement in incarceration. Behind a steel door for 22 to 24 hours a day. Life without freedom. And I draw on that picture because I think many people think that that is what the Christian life is like. And perhaps that's you here today. Perhaps you've been invited along by someone and you've come along today and you think Christian life is life without freedom. A life with rules, a life with beliefs and behavior that are like jail bars, restricting freedom. Perhaps that's what you think this morning. If it is, welcome to you. I'm glad you're here. And I hope as we spend some time just thinking about these important things, there'll be something helpful for you this morning. Because Jesus says there could be nothing further from the truth. So I want you to spend some time just considering that with me this morning. Jesus says there could be nothing further from the truth. Did you see as that passage was read for us by Carla what Jesus says about himself? I want to draw your attention just to verses 7 to 10. 7 to 10. I think the whole chapter is worth reading. Perhaps you want to do that with whoever brought you here this morning and talk about that with them. But just notice with me what Jesus says about himself in verses 7 to 10. Therefore Jesus said again, I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, but I have come that they may have life, and life to the full. I am the good shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep. Why don't you just think about those words for a few moments with me this morning? Jesus has already claimed in the preceding chapters of John's Gospel to be the bread of life, who feeds our spiritual hunger. Prior to that, he has also said that he is the light of the world, who brings spiritual sight. He then also talks about the fact that he is the good shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep. And today I want to focus on another one of his big claims, that I am the door, I am the gate. Jesus says, I am, in verse 9, the gate. Do you see it there in verse 7? I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. So exactly what is Jesus claiming here? And what does it have to do with us today? Well, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. So let's unpack it, noticing two things. Firstly, salvation from. Notice what Jesus says, salvation from, in verse 9. I am the gate, whoever enters through me will be saved. And the obvious question is, saved from what? Saved from what? If you don't understand what you need to be saved from, then you don't understand why you need to be saved. So let's think about that verse. Salvation from what? Well, Jesus draws on the picture of sheep and a shepherd, something that we're familiar with here in New Zealand, and he likens us to sheep and him to the shepherd. It's a familiar picture that they would have understood back then, and we understand today, I think, especially in New Zealand. And here's the gate of the sheep pen, the gate of the sheep pen. Now, I think in New Zealand they roam free on the hills. I'm not much of a farmer myself, and I don't know whether we have gate pens all that much, but I think back then they had gate pens. They had a pen, and the sheep came in at night, and during the day they could roam under the watchful eye of the sheep. Is that right, Andrea? Have I got that right? Yep, good. Okay, Andrew's a farmer, so I just wanted to check with that. And Jesus says, no, there's a gate, and the sheep enter in through that to the safety and security at night. And so he draws on that picture. Safety and security from what? Well, do you notice what he says there? What is safety and security from? Well, in the passage he talks about the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. He says there are those who would steal and kill and destroy. Now, Jesus had in mind, we know from the context, had in mind the religious leaders of the day. The religious leaders of the day. We see that in chapter 9, and there was conflict between him and between Jesus and them, because they taught falsely that you could get to heaven through your own merits and through your own efforts. You could be right with God through your own labors. And they stole innocence, they killed faith, and they destroyed lives. And we see that they were after pay, they were after power, they were after prestige. They wanted to be seen by people in their religiosity. Pay, power, and prestige, grabbing after these things. And such types exist across all ages, don't they? And they are not unique to religion. See, in all walks of life, you will find those who steal innocence, who kill faith and destroy lives. That is not unique to religion. In order to gain positions, power, pay, prestige, there are those who will do all sorts of things. And Jesus says, that won't happen with me. I'm not like that. But you know, the Bible speaks of a far greater danger that we need saving from. Saving from those who would lead us astray, yes, for power, prestige, and pay, that would steal innocence, kill faith, and destroy lives. But Jesus speaks of a far greater danger that has eternal consequences. And there's a passage in the Bible, in Hebrews, that talks about this. Listen to what it says. I think I put it up on the data projector for you there to see. It's in Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 27 that says, and just as it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment. After that comes judgment. You see, Jesus is talking about salvation from thieves and from judgment. Now, I know judgment's not a particularly nice thing to be thinking about on a Sunday morning, and perhaps you came here expecting a nice uplifting sermon. Well, bear with me, because I think it's important to understand what we are saved from before we can appreciate what we are saved for. So just go with me here. You see, the Bible speaks about the fact that we are needing to be saved from a far greater danger than thieves, that of eternal judgment. The eternal judgment of God that we'll all rightly face because of our rebellion against Him. Just as surely as you'll die once, Hebrews says, you will stand before God. And you, because of your rebellion against Him, maybe even which is now being felt in your heart as you hear these words, your heart's not happy about this. And that is because it's rebellious against God. But Jesus willingly on the cross takes His judgment upon Himself so that we don't have to. That's what happens on the cross. You see, it's a great exchange. Jesus becomes like us, taking judgment upon himself on the cross so that we can become like him in a right relationship before God as our Father. It's the great exchange so that we can be welcomed into the place of safety both now and for eternity, starting now and for eternity. And that's what John says in chapter 3 of his book. He says, God didn't send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Yes, judgment's not great to talk about, not nice to hear. I don't really like talking about it either. But isn't it magnificent to understand that that is what Jesus saves us from? Here's a question for you. If the sheep were outside of the sheep pen at night, what would that mean for them? It's a pretty simple question. Josh, what would it mean for a sheep to be outside of the sheep pen at night? Oh, yeah, okay. Let's get more practical than that. That's quite a technical answer, okay. What would I'm thinking like really practical here. If a sheep was outside of the sheep pen at night, what would it mean for that sheep? Carlo, Miko, anyone else? No, these guys are great. Yes, what would it mean, guys? You're always good with my questions. Vulnerable to be eaten. Exactly. Spot on. Miko, did you have another one? Did he get your? They might be lost. Yeah, they might be lost. Good one. Vulnerable to wild beasts or danger. Absolutely right. Spot on, guys. Thanks for your help with that. You see, if they're outside the sheep pen at night, that's not freedom. That's not freedom. That's suicide. That's danger. That's vulnerability to being eaten or being lost. You see, the sheep don't enter the sheep pen going, this is restrictive. This is restrictive. How was that? Was the sheep boy? Was that good? That was my best sheep impersonation. I hope it wasn't disappointing. Restrictive. That's what we do, isn't it? The sheep don't stand talking to each other and go, oh, the shepherd's spoiling our fun again. We were going to go out and party and have a good time tonight, and we're inside, confined here, and he's just a killjoy. Do you think sheep do that? I don't know. Maybe they do, but never got into the mind of a sheep. Do they hang out together and say, oh, it's our right to choose? He never gives it to us. He doesn't at the gate say, do you want in or out, and doesn't give us the right to choose. Nasty shepherd. Killjoy. Fun spoiler. Do you see the point? The sheepfold is restrictive, but in a good way. In a good way. You see, spiritual life, protection, security, and safety is found inside the sheep pen. That's what Jesus is getting at. Life outside is death. It is vulnerability to being lost. Wild beasts. And when we enter in to the sheep pen, it is a place of safety, not restriction, but safety through Jesus, who is the gate. Safety from judgment, safety from thieves, salvation through Jesus Christ. You see, Jesus says that in verse 9, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, all are welcome, but only through Jesus. All are welcome, but only through Jesus. He is the only door into the place of spiritual and eternal safety, protection and life, because he is the Son of God who lays down his life for his sheep. He is the Good Shepherd. Jesus doesn't say, he is one of many, so take your pick. That might be what you think, but that wasn't Jesus' opinion. He says he's the only door. That's a big claim, isn't it? It's a big claim. And he backs up that big claim with amazing works. Amazing works. He doesn't just say it, he demonstrates it. Words and works, he says, makes a claim and he backs it up. And I want to encourage you, you may not like that claim, but take some time to investigate it honestly, because we read things like this in John chapter 10 and verse 37. Do not believe me unless I do the works of my Father. Don't believe it. If the works don't bear testimony to his claims, then it's not worth believing. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, but that you might know and understand that the Father is in me and I in the Father. And I want to suggest that as you read maybe just John's Gospel, you'll see that he doesn't just make big claims. He backs them up. And you know, John even wrote this book. John, do you know what he says in the end of his book? He says this, listen, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples which are not recorded in this book. He says there's just too many of them. But these are written that you may believe. John has selected, under the inspiration of God and the guidance of the Holy Spirit, specific things about Jesus that you need to know. That you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, John 20 verse 31, and that by believing in his name, you may have life. You may have life in his name. So there's a whole book. Take some time to read it. John, it's a great book. Maybe the person who brought you here this morning, take some time to read it with them. Salvation from. Now you might say, well, what's it for? Well, let's look at that lastly. Salvation for. What is this life that John talks about in John 20:31? What is this life that is abundant that Jesus speaks about in John chapter 10? It's good to say what we are saved from, but what are we saved for? Well, notice that secondly, verse 10 of chapter 10. It builds on. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. Well, I want to suggest two things that we see in the text. It's this idea of a life of spiritual provision. Spiritual provision. Do you see verse 9? I am the gate, who enters through me will be saved. He will come in and go out and find pasture. What is pasture to a sheep? It is provision. It is provision. Not just protection, but provision. Sheep are protected by night in the sheep pen, and by day they enjoy the pasture, the best pasture that the shepherd can find. And when it comes to Jesus, that is our need for forgiveness. That is our peace. That is our purpose. They are all met in Jesus. That is the real pasture that we need. Through Jesus, we experience God's abundant, overflowing grace that he lavished upon us in Jesus. A life of spiritual provision and a life of true freedom. So we finish. Won't you think about this point with me? Jesus saves us for a life of spiritual provision. He gives us everything we need to be in a right relationship with God. But he also brings us into a life of true freedom. Do you see in verse 10 what he says? If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and go out. We've talked about saved. We've talked about finding pasture. And he says, go in and go out. You see, that's not restrictive, is it? Within the relationship of the sheep and the shepherd, the sheep enjoy freedom, don't they? And abundance. Because the shepherd looks after them. The shepherd is good and he loves them and he does what's right for them and he does what's good for them and he is committed to their good. And that's what a relationship with Jesus looks like. Here's another great question. Another great question. When is a fish truly free? When is a fish truly free? Have you ever thought about that? You ever thought about when a fish is truly free? It's funny the things we talk about on a Sunday morning, isn't it? When is a fish truly free, Caitlin? When's a fish truly free? Ever thought about that? Anyone? When's a fish truly free? Naomi? Isabella? What's that? When it's swimming around in the sea. Spot on. Good one. That's exactly right. When it's swimming around in water. Have you ever thought about that? A fish is only free if it's restricted and limited to water. Thought about that? That's good. When you tell your friends about that, just say, I learned that from our pastor. I learned that from David. Credit. No, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? If you put fish on the sand, you take fish out of the bowl or out of the sea and you put it on the sand and you catch it, what does it do? It flaps because it's desperate. It doesn't want to be there. It's not happy. It's not enjoying life abundant. It's near death and it wants to get back in the water. You might think you're setting it free by putting it on the sand, but you're in fact taking away its freedom to live and move in the environment for which it was created, and you are killing it. Do you see, freedom is not the absence of restrictions, but the right restrictions. In the right restrictions, the fish flourishes. In the wrong ones, it dies. The quote's up on the data projector for you. Think about it. Freedom is not the absence of restrictions. We live in a world that thinks that's the case. And don't you wonder how that's working out for us? It's finding the right restrictions. Let me illustrate that for you just quickly too. You see, there is freedom within the God-ordained government. There is freedom within the God-ordained government. When we abide by the laws of the country, there is protection, there is safety, there is care, there is respect for all, and all flourish in that environment. When there is disrespect for the laws of the country, what happens? There is chaos, there is anarchy, there is disorder, there is hurt, there is pain, there are fines, there are restrictions of freedom, there is death, and there is loss. Do you see? Freedom is not found in the absence of restrictions, it is found in the right restrictions. What about freedom within the God-ordained institution of marriage? Within marriage, as God ordained it, one man between one woman for life, till death do you part, there is faithfulness, there is security, there is love, there is commitment, there is sexual intimacy, there is purity, there is relationship, there is care, there is selflessness, and there is safety. But when relationships are exercised out of those bounds, people become the object of my gratification. To use and abuse, to break and destroy, to hurt. There are sexual diseases and unwanted pregnancies and scars that we carry for life. Do you see, freedom is not found in the absence of restrictions, it is found in the right restrictions. We are designed to live lovingly, designed to live loving Jesus and others. Can you imagine if everyone did that? I want to suggest that that's true freedom. Not restrictions, but freedom. He's one that sets us free. And so, to remind you again of verse 9, I am the gate, whoever enters through me will be saved. Well, you know what that means. And he will come in and go out. You know what that means, freedom. And he'll find pasture, fulfillment. And so you know what it means when he says, I have come that they may have life and life abundantly. See, it's a big claim, but it's a gracious invitation, isn't it? A gracious invitation to anyone and everyone to enter by him. So we're not to look at the door and go, that's a pretty door. Fascinating door. Great to talk about the door. We're not to hang around the door, are we? No, we're to enter through it. And in the course of the day, we may enter through many doors. But I wonder, have you entered through Jesus? Because Jesus goes on to say in other parts of the Gospels, make every effort to enter through the narrow door, because many, I tell you, will try to enter and will not be able to do so. Once the owner of the house gets up and closes the door, you will stand outside knocking and pleading. Sir, open the door for us. But he will answer, I do not know you and where you come from. And so Jesus kindly warns us and lovingly warns us to not delay, but to walk through the door. For when he returns, it may be shut and it will be too late. And the opportunity will be gone. Perhaps today's your day to enter through Jesus and find true freedom and abundant life.